Steinberg. And before we took a short break, we had Senator Wamatangi with something on his tongue to say. But I need also to let you know some of our panelists this morning, they've been caught up with the rigors of the campaigns. We have Medio out of the country. Also, we have Boni Khalwale down on the ground trying to secure his votes on the ground. Also, Mithika Linturi was traveling to Nairobi. He promised to be here, but of course, it seems also he slept through the alarm. That also happened or has happened to Hassan Omar. And also, Farah Malim has promised to be, on his way. The last time we talked, he was in traffic. I told him to take a border, and I'm wondering why he's not actually arrived as yet. So we'll find out if he had taken a border or not. Senator Wamatangi.
Yeah, fine. I hope Farah has a helmet, a spare helmet in his house. Otherwise, we need him in the future. But
a helmet with a wiper.
hopefully. And then, I just didn't want to extend that debate beyond what we had said. But,
yes.
But I just wanted to mention to my colleague here, to my friend, Wakili, that sometimes those comments that are made on the sidelines by those ICC officials mean a lot.
Yes.
Sometimes just when the case for the president collapsed, I was attending a conference in Rabat, in Morocco. And some of the facilitators were the ICC. And it was during their presentation that I seriously challenged one of them on how, on one side, they could be preaching about justice, about the process and the rule of law, and how to uphold it, and especially in an African nation
yes.
like Morocco. And I challenged him when he was speaking. Now, once we finished the conference, we went outside. He pulled me aside because I had directly challenged him on the legality, the sustainability of the matters that were holding against the president and the deputy.
Yes.
So he pulled me aside and he told me when we were out, actually, we don't think we have a case in the case of the president. And I think we are going to be terminating it in not less than 2 days from now. Those were his words from the sidelines. And true to that statement, the following morning, they announced. Bensouda got the information from the gentleman, and within no time, they came and they called it off. So when this fellow is speaking about some anticipated future possible regime, he could be meaning a lot. But however, we are not saying that we are scared of what they are saying or doing. We are only saying that they should know that we are worried and aware that indeed they could be having such machinations. So that's all I would want to say for the ICC. I don't want to extend it because it's really not much. I mean, it's a game that would want to be played by people who have nothing else to say. For example, at this time, ask yourself with the kind of things that we are facing as a country. When we have to put this country squarely on a different path, ensure that that we go on with the gains that have been now actualized from the time of Kibaki, taken a notch higher by Jubilee, and now giving the country a real hope that we can change our future and start doing positive things, grow the economy, ensure that the projects that have been started and were started during the Kibaki time, not only during the whole time, that at least have given people in education sector better hope, a better learning platform, in our infrastructure, from Thika Road to SGR to all the other highways. If we are saying that that is the direction the country is facing, and then somebody somewhere goes to introduce a new debate about taking us back to where we were when the whole world was being asked to look at us as incompetent, as people who have no systems that we can be able to sustain even in the justice area, that we are not able to control and to ensure that we can call to account people who commit crimes in our own country. I mean, that's not a place we want to go back to. We want now to redefine our future. I said here last week, we were invited to speak at the G20 conference through our G7 conference, through our president. He's also invited for the ongoing G20 conference. That's why we should be going. That's why we should be looking. Not speaking about the dark past of where we came from. And by the way, may NASA and their friends know that this story about ICC about the 2007 clashes and the lives and property that was lost is not our cup of tea every morning. This is something we want to deal with, forget fast, and put it behind us and chart a strong future forward as one country and one people.
All right,
Yeah. For a moment, I thought Kimani Wamatangi was campaigning for the opposition, because when he says that we shouldn't engage about ICC, yet it is his own people who introduced ICC. In fact, it was in their rally yesterday where the majority leader Duale and then the deputy president introduced it. So I hope they have listened, as he says. Now, a quick answer to that is that I think ICC has is not a factor because the cases were conclusively done. Debarl, from a legal perspective, a criminal case, whether international or local, is won based on prosecutory evidence. And I think from what happened, or from what transpired the last 6-7 years, ending or culminating to the end of both cases in 2015, it was basically the inability of the prosecution to raise enough evidence. And you know, evidence is premised upon the availability of witnesses. Now that was already done, dusted. So the reason I think ICC, even going into the future, may not be a significant issue is, even if there's a regime change, what can they do differently to bring back the ICC cases? What new, in fact, what new witnesses can they bring up? So that, I think, is not a question to consider. And I think the senator is very right in saying that these elections is about performance. In fact, he summed it so well in the sense that the discussion in the voters' mind will be whether Jubilee has performed or not. And I think, and as I was saying, it was wrong for them to introduce ICC. Fine, politically it may have the impact of raising up again or mobilizing their core support base, but if they could concentrate on what they have done, which I think they also face the challenge of trying to project. You know, for example, he's mentioned when he compares the Kibaki regime versus the Jubilee regime. I think that one, it's even lost. I would prefer them to focus on themselves as Jubilee and not saying in comparative. When you compare, you lose the debate. In what way? If it is about infrastructure, that question again comes into question. How much Kibaki did vis-a-vis what Jubilee did? And even if it is how much did, for example, Jubilee would say they did SGR, but to what cost? At what cost? At what debt burden? So I would think it is better for Jubilee to sell the agenda as we promised 1, 2, 3, we've delivered 1, 2, and possibly fail to deliver these others because of these issues. Because I feel that will be the main reason. And I think there's something different this time again, Debarl. The voter is different. The voters seem to be more demanding. And that comes from their view of what the county governments have done. The way they have significantly challenged the county governments is the same way the national governments will be challenged. And I think part of the reason ICC comes into the question is because even within Jubilee strongholds, their own supporters have questions, especially on as regards the cost of living. That debate is still out here. So as to how Jubilee can wiggle through that, and I think their salvation would be possibly if things change for the pricing. I saw the other day, I think the last 2 days, there's still been maize shortage despite the subsidy. So I think you'll find Jubilee struggling to ensure that as we enter home stretch, that will be the basis. And you know, the opposition has an easy time. Let me give, for example, why I think some things sell, some don't sell. When Jubilee went to Kisii and gave compensation to the IDPs, there were two things. I will call it a poison chalice because two reactions came out. Number one, the first question was, why did it take so long? And number two, the question of amounts, how much were given in comparative analysis. So you see, even the same issue, as he says, anything to do with post-election is a poison chalice for them. Bringing them again brings more questions. Like, to the extent, I think in Kisii, it was a good gesture, but politically speaking, it didn't unemploy it. In fact, it just raised more questions. So as to how they can be able to proceed on that, and maybe, you know, the opposition will have an easy time capitalizing on that, ringing on and bringing on the same issue over and over again.
All right, Senator, okay. So, but the question I want to also ask, because this all the debate about ICC, has the case ended in its entirety? It has ended in its entirety, except this. There was a rider when the Uhuru case was dismissed. The ICC said they are dropping, but they are not fully, or they are not closing the file in finality, because they said if in the event in the future more evidence or they will get witnesses, then they can restart the case, which is again same thing with the Ruto case, because the prosecution acknowledged and accepted
that we don't have witnesses, we don't have enough evidence to convict. Because remember, in criminal law, you have to have evidence. So they acknowledge, they accepted. The only problem is that they gave a rider that in the event, if circumstances change, which I think that is already gone and lost, if you couldn't guess, and in fact, if you couldn't get evidences 5 years after post-election.
Over the years, where will you get the evidence?
In fact, whether the opposition wins or not, ICC is not an issue anymore. I don't think ICC can still come back because, one, they don't have an investigative arm. So how will they investigate afresh? Again, look at the time period within which, in fact, we are 10 years on since this issue happened. So if within the first 4, 5, 6 years you never got evidence, what more evidence are you looking for? I don't think there's any way possible that case will be revived. I don't think so. In fact, if it will be revived, maybe for political reasons, but it has no basis at all, or there's no probability of success going into the future. That was lost, and that was it. And in fact, the Kenyan case ended up having a serious negative impact on ICC as an institution, to the extent that it caused them so much damage within Africa, to the extent that now they are really struggling to rebuild their image and support of the developing world. Because remember, most of the members of ICC are African states, and Kenya was successful in rallying the other African countries to say, which is, in fact, it is a legitimate issue, that why is it ICC focuses on the developed, or in this sub-Saharan African countries, Congo, Kenya, etc. So that debate, I think, ended up painting the ICC in such a bad light that they are really struggling to ensure they still have the support of its members.
Probably just for us to start on that last note on the ICC. Actually, what the Kenyan case did was not to paint the ICC as unsuccessful or inept. What the Kenyan case did was to expose the ICC for what it is. Because if you look at and I don't want to go into international politics right now, we are talking about the local scene, but it is spread all over. The reason why you saw that resonance in reaction of all the African nations when the Kenyan case was brought to fore is because this is oppression that every state in Africa had felt internally and directly. I mean, knowing that and seeing what is happening in the international arena, from all the way from Syria, all the way from the entire Middle East, from Palestine, and nobody was ever brought to book, up to Iraq, in Afghanistan, where, I mean, even in their own neighborhoods, nobody was touched at all by ICC. Their entire resources and eyes were trained on Africa, and that's why there was that reaction. And the Kenyan cases were the climax of the dishonesty within which they operated, and especially their demeanor in looking at African nations as samples that they can use to continue what you would call not only intellectual but colonial oppression. Because, I mean, really, in all fairness, how would you justify what the ICC was doing in all the cases they have prosecuted in Africa, and while deliberately keeping a closed eye on what is happening in their own doorstep? I don't want to go to the detail of that discussion, because that was not the content of what I wanted to discuss. I wanted to pick this on where Wakili spoke about the comparison, or comparing the Kibaki regime and Jubilee. And what I decided was, we are not comparing the Kibaki regime and the Jubilee administration. We are saying that, yes, from that time when Kibaki led this country for those last 5 years, because that's the time when he was able to start working, those last 5 years, and give this country the hope and notion that, yes, things can be better. The Jubilee administration came in and picked it up from there, and picked it up with gusto, and raised it to a higher level, and actualized it, and continued with what Kibaki had started, even to a better and more excellent standards. And that's why you find, for example, and this is the norm in every government, there is always a policy of continuity, but continuity in doing the right things or the right projects. And that's why we are right now. If you want, and I don't think that anyone anywhere, either here, locally, within the country, or even internationally, would argue on the question of performance, remember and remind yourself of the comments of Angela Merkel herself when commenting on the success of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta when inviting him for the G20 talks. And the record he has set in leadership, not only in Kenya, but in Africa. Now that tells you that how would we say as a country that what the leader of Germany can see and attest to, we cannot see locally, or we cannot acknowledge locally. You know, we must call things for what they are. And that's why I want to say, if you look at the polls, and we must, I remember last time when we were here with Miguna, there was a big discussion of whether polls are believable. But we also must say that we believe in science to a bigger extent. Look at all the polls that have been conducted, and every single respondent in those polls was asked, if you are to vote right now, whom would you vote back as president? The answer to more than 52% of all Kenyans right now is President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Which party? The answer to more than 55% is Jubilee Party. The main reason, if you looked at the breakdown of the polls that were conducted last, there was a specific question that was asking, why would you vote this party back, Jubilee? Why would you vote Uhuru back? And the single response was based on performance. Period. That was it.
Maybe a quick answer, Debarl, on that. I think that is not how to campaign, in the sense that if I'm to use the same statistics, if we are to use the same opinion poll, even among Jubilee supporters, 70% of Kenyan thinks the country is going in a bad direction. To be specific, in fact, among the opposition supporters, it was 95%. So if we are to use the same statistics, he's not right to say that the entire group. And in fact, to the extent that I think there's a much different in this election. In the previous elections, maybe the voters would be told what is being done. You know, they can see. For example, I just picked out something which I think is not working so well. The president had tried, but I think the entire brigade is going back to the idea that you can tell people we've done this. And you know, you can't continue telling people that we are in a better off if the economy is doing badly. You just need to look at simple indicators. Number one, is unemployment level lesser than it was 5 years ago? It's a no. It is just basic. How many times every time we are here, and it is every day it is reported, how many companies are closing down? They have never answered that question. Number two, what is our debt level? Right. They don't answer that question. So to the extent I think the president had been right in saying this, that we have achieved 1, 2, 3, but we still need more time. We still need to do, in fact, it is much better to acknowledge the mistakes rather than ratcheting, and you know, in fact, it ends up being a negative, to the extent that if you end up saying, for example, that the president being invited to G20, the president being invited to G7 is an achievement, I think that is, in fact, that will be very low expectation. And remember again, Kenya was invited as a country. It's a power to reckon with within East and Central Africa. It is not because of the president as a person. And I don't think Angela Merkel...
the leadership of the president and his deliverables as well.
In fact, it is the geopolitics of the area. Kenya still remains a critical player. Ask yourself why the last 4 years we are not part of it. It is rotational. Ethiopia will be invited today, the next time will be Kenya. It is rotational. That is how they do in Africa. So to be specific, are you aware Chad was was part of the meeting? Yeah. So do you want to say Chad can speak and say because of the achievements? That's a lie. Secondly,
so it flies in the face of what Senator is saying. In fact, you're telling us that it is because of achievement of Uhuru Kenyatta.
I think even it would be very insincere and insensitive to the voter to tell them the German chancellor says the president does so well, so you guys vote for him. That will fly on your face. To be specific, I think this campaign will be won on the simplicities. Go to the people, tell them, when we came before you, we told you we will reduce the cost of production. We have succeeded in 1, 2, 3, we have failed in this. But if you go to the same voter who finds life more expensive, who finds the debt burden so high, who finds unemployment so high, then you tell them that we are doing super well, we even did better than Kibaki. In fact, to correct the notion, the first administration of Kibaki did so well, it was undone with the post-election violence. That the next 5 years of the Kibaki regime was to undo the damage of post-election. That by 2013, Jubilee had a very good platform. In what way? Kibaki had tried to reignite the progress they had made in the first 5 years. that Jubilee, in fact, if you look at their promises, and which I keep telling them, if you pick their promises, they are very good. They are very refreshing. Have they kept their word? That should be the only thing that they... And you know, it is very easy to be honest and sincere to a voter.
Yes.
And I think the president, when they were launching their campaign, after handing over papers, he almost came closer to that, because he says, with humility, I acknowledge what I have achieved. But with humility, I acknowledge I have not achieved 1, 2, 3. In fact, to be specific, I saw in the dailies the wife of the deputy president saying in all humility that they seek forgiveness for what they have not done. I think that resonates better with their core support base. Because if you go to Rift Valley, where maize farmers, for example, continue to grapple with the idea. Yes. How comes we have maize? How comes it was so difficult for the government to buy the maize at 3,500, yet it was so easy to import and pay the same price? How do you tell the same voters that we are so good at you? For example, the fertilizer issue, where the farmers complained for the better part of last year that the fertilizer they were given was substandard. How do you again tell them that we've done so well? It's rather you come to them and tell them there's a small mistake here, we've already corrected, and in fact tout and say we have set up a manufacturing entity here where we want to do this. That sells. Sincerity is what will sell. And that's what I feel for the Jubilee. If they are to continue painting, in fact, there was a comment of which I think their strategy should take. If you look at the comments that come after they launched the portal about government delivery, there was a very good cynical comment that came out of it, that if only we would be given chance to live inside that portal, life would be so good. What does that tell you? The voters struggles to connect.
The portal,
you
the
can't
realities
go
of
to
the...
Kisii, for example, and tell them that we've done SGR. They can't say it. So bring it down. Just be modest. Tell them this is where we failed. Right. This is what we've done. That sells.
All right, Senator Wamatangi. First of all, I think on that particular notion of Angela Merkel, we remember very well, he praised the president on the account of his eloquence. Not really on the account of his leadership and deliverables.
Let me correct you, because you know sometimes you only see what you want to see and hear what you want to see. I mean that's
that is a news account that we have.
That's human. But let me tell you, and I want to say this to my friend here. You know, I don't want to lengthen the discussion as much as you have detailed so much. I just want to compress or summarize. You know, when you're writing compositions, you'd summarize the whole talk you have given. So let me let me help you to summarize what you are saying. You see, progress is not the absence of either difficulty or challenges. Making progress is the presence of forward movement, no matter from. But as long as you have intentionally, deliberately, willfully made steps forward, that is what is called progress. If you would look at the whole global landscape, from Iceland to South Africa, from Afghanistan to Korea, there is not any single country in the whole world, including Japan, that would say that they have a zero unemployment rate. None in the world. The question always is, have you made progress? And I want to remind Wakili, because he's gone to school and he teaches, of the famous saying that even if you make one step and fall forward, you have still made progress. What we are saying, and the comparative he's trying to draw, that Kibaki did so much. Kibaki was getting us from a ditch.
Very true.
When he was getting us from a ditch, at that time we were so emotionally bittered, so that when we started to see the light and exhale, it was so exciting. And that is why it still feels very good. The feel-good factor was huge when we would see that, you mean now we can do our roads so that you can travel from Nairobi to Nakuru past Gilgil and not be able to, and not suffer the mess of a rubber road. That refreshed us. Picking from there, the disaster would have been if Jubilee took over and let us slide back. But now, continuously, and even more progressively, there has been growth. My friend, if you compare the statistics, if you compare the statistics of unemployment in this country from 2010 up to this time, Yes, we have not gotten there.
Thank you.
That is the answer. We don't have the perfect solution right now. We are not at the apex of it, but we are making progress. Sure progress and determined progress.
All right, if we look at the business, if we look at the Business Daily today,
yes,
will you say that we are sure making progress?
Not at all.
Yes, look at the Business Daily, the story there. 1.2 billion shillings, China's Fortune car assembly set for auction. End of the road for Chinese motor vehicle dealer, which entered the Kenyan market in 2011. But this is just totally following the Samia Africa that was closed. I mean, the environment for doing business in the country.
You cannot compare the performance of our economy nationally with the fate of a Chinese company that came to try their hand in our local vehicle market.
But I mean, what would you say about Samia Africa as well?
Now, my friend, don't even talk about the cars. Don't even talk. Let me give you.
Can we talk about the tires?
Let me give you simple statistics. Simple statistics, even in the SMEs, small and micro enterprises, it is a known statistic for businesses that even if you started 100 of them, you would have probably a maximum of 10% success.
But
that is the way it
just
goes.
a moment. Just a moment.
You
All right.
I'm sorry to butt in. Photon to say that because they failed to make cars that are good for the local terrain,
it's good you've mentioned.
That is a signal of how the economy performs.
It is good you've mentioned, because also the reports that we have, in the last 5 years, 1.2 million SMEs have folded.
For the last 2 years.
For 5 good years, 1.2 million SMEs.
If you talk SMEs,
are we talking about now?
If you talk SMEs now, you ask me, I'm the one who passed the law in this house on SMEs. Less than 2 months ago.
Thank you.
So if you want SMEs, I'll tell you about SMEs. I know the whole back and forth.
You tell us. You tell us. Let me also rope in Farah Mali Musa. So I want to really applaud you. Did you take a border, by the way?
Not quite, but
yeah, better late than ever. Thank you.
Now, you see, when I hear Wamatangi talking about the state of the economy in this country and the kind of progress we made, it reminds me of a movie I watched while I was in my 20s. Yes. Samurai, I think, if you remember. And this guy...
The Last Samurai?
Something like that, I can't remember. But anyway, he falls from the 13th floor. And somehow, along the way, he's asked, how do you feel? And he says, so far, so good. You know what I mean? So far, so good. But of course, the inevitable is there. He's going to crash and he's going to die. Now, the fact of the matter is that we've taken a free fall from the moment these boys took over. And when I say boys, I don't mean the president and his deputy, I mean the boys, including my friend Wamatangi here. Let me tell you one thing. You can't hide the facts. You can't hide the facts.
Yes.
You can't hide the facts. At the time when Kibaki left office, in the coalition government, the dollar was trading at 80 shillings today. The shilling was trading at 80 to the dollar. What is it trading at today? 103. When you talk about growing an economy, for a third world country like ours, you're talking about bringing in investors from outside. And investors, when they come and put up, businesses like this Photon, what do you call, factory in here, by and large, they borrow from banks. Yes. And if somebody had borrowed an external loan for such big investments, because they're bringing in money from outside, on a 6% or 3%, whatever it is, 2.5% plus whatever label, and then suddenly it's supposed to pay back in that from the returns, or rather the revenues in shillings, yes, which has to be converted into dollars. Suddenly that person from 6% will be paying 27% over and above that. So anybody who borrowed from outside and came in as an investor or brought his own money in here and basically needs the returns, suddenly finds himself shackled when he has to pay 30-something% for the loan that you took just because of the way the shilling went. And now, these people say that they were going to grow the economy by double digit. Yeah. Double digit. 10%. 10%, double digit, you're talking about 10% and above. What is the economy growing at? It has gone down. This economy has slowed. They say they're going to create 500,000 jobs a year. How many jobs have they created?
700. No, they say 1 million.
Absolutely. No, they said 500,000 minimum is what I remember, but not even
750, but that's okay.
Serious. I have a problem with those figures. I have a problem with those statistics. Because if we're creating those numbers of jobs, we will see it out into the market.
Oh,
it's like the 2.5 billion US dollars, which was supposed to be euro, which has to be put into our economy.
Yes.
You will feel it. You will smell it. You see what I mean? It is too big money to be able to be hidden in a lot. The economy will feel it in every sense. The real estate will feel it. The retail, the buying powers of the people. Go to the supermarkets right now. Go to Nakumat. Go to Uchumi and see the crowds that you have in there. People cannot afford to buy anything. The economy is shrinking like hell. And we have borrowed, look, from 1.75 trillion, or rather $1.75 billion external debt. What do we have today? Closer to 9. In 3 years, listen to me. In 50-something years, we only had less than $2 billion in external debt. Today, we have it in almost 9, close to 9. Give it another 5 years, we will go down and bust the way Argentina. You remember the way Argentina one time busted completely and the economy went to hell. This country, we are headed for that. There is nothing that is growing in here. The effects are there out in the streets. The Mamamboga cannot afford. You're talking about SMCs. People cannot afford the 3 square meals that they afforded at the time when Kibaki was there.
All right. Okay, but should you, looking at, because also Panis is saying, come 2019, this country might face an economic meltdown.
To be very specific.
It has already, that one is inevitable.
Because now it seems also, maybe, should NASAM now be in government? Will they be holding the skunk? Right? And people will think actually NASA is...
I really feel for the next regime.
It's sad. It's very, very sad.
Even if NASA comes into power, they'll have their biggest challenge in hand.
Absolutely.
Because all these loans that we borrowed are coming to
mature
in 2018.
Yes.
To be specific, are you aware for SGR we are commencing payment in 2018? And SGR as it stands, it cannot meet its operation costs until and when we are able to start full-time freight. In fact, I was looking at statistics about what can make SGR pay itself back, where we talk about the amount of freight that has to be moved through. Secondly, it may end up being a question whether we are going to use SGR for transit or for domestic. Now, when you put those into question, the next regime has the most difficult job trying to ensure that we balance our debt books vis-a-vis development. Whether Jubilee comes back, whether NASA comes in, their biggest headache comes in 2018, 2019. Because all these loans, including Eurobond, we start paying them. If by now we pay up to a third, then there is a guarantee. In fact, if you look at the estimates, by 2018-19, almost half of it will be to pay debt. To be specific, the parliamentary committee brought it out. In fact, don't forget, and as I've said it here before, the same parliamentary committee that is non-partisan had refused the treasury to extend the debt ceiling. If indeed they didn't have an issue, why did they refuse and had to be cajoled? And in fact, the chair of the same committee is a Jubilee MP. So why did they refuse? Because of the fear. IMF and World Bank, for long they kept saying we are within the ratio, we are within, but this year they changed tune and say we need to focus on that. Don't forget again.
Look at the SGR, on that SGR note.
Okay, can we have
just a moment, on that SGR note, as a train, we're using trains right now. By the way, I saw the trains the other day. And it is a far cry from any other trains. What Magufuli is putting up in that place, what we've seen in the continent. This looks like very old locomotive trains, all of them repainted and redone, whatever it is. And I doubt if it costs even a quarter of what we are made to believe that it costs. But having said that, we have a flourishing, very vibrant, dominant road transport network in this country here that feeds all the countries in the region. The truckers are from here. The moment you're going to have that, the SGR working on a fully fledged, you are going to impact on the road transport. So the road transport is going to lose out. People will lose their livelihood. Not only that, all the way from Mombasa to Nairobi, there are all these centers, Sultan Hamid, Mtito, every town along the way out here. Yes. Those towns are going to die. They are right now doing well because the buses go through there. The people do expenditure there, they stop at every place. I mean, the trucks are there, thousands of them.
All right.
Those towns are doing well right now because of the road transport.
Thank you.
The moment you diminish that,
thank you,
and give it all to the railway, those towns are going to die.
All right, thank you. I think your mic has fallen. I'll come and fix it for you, Honorable Farah. But let's hear from Wamatangi in the meantime.
I have two issues here, and I want to take on the two gentlemen. But let me start with Farah, because I am amazed. I am amazed that a man of Farah's standing and intellectual know-how and exposure. In fact, since the time when I started sitting with Farah in this forum, today I have had him make the most
outlandish.
I can't believe that those remarks are from this man who once sat as the deputy speaker. Somebody I have thought, although he is in NASA and has embraced wrong ideologies, yes. I didn't know that they have eaten so deep into him. I mean, to the extent, can you imagine Farah telling this country that to sustain those towns which are on the road, that we have to continue to sustain an inefficient system that sees our people paying more than thrice what they should pay for road transport. Farah, you had your time. Farah, you had your time. You see, that theory you are trying to advance has no place at all in somebody who is forward-looking or knowledgeable about economies. I mean, for goodness sake, every single country, what they have done in the world is to make the cost of freight cheaper. That is how you go.
Thank you.
And you say, no, don't say thank you.
We need to wrap up on this because we have issues of and we are strapped for time.
The small towns from Mombasa,
Let me finish.
From Mombasa or Sultan, Hamud, Voi and wherever will be sustained. There will be an equilibrium of how the freight is shared, but what will eventually happen in the beneficiary will be the common person who wants to transport, because the cost of freight will fall. You will have probably lesser trucks. You may have
less buses.
No, excuse me, my friend. You may have a few lesser trucks, but you have those people may be divesting elsewhere. You have, but at the end of the day, the global gain in a lowered cost is for everybody.
Thank you.
And I wanted to answer to Mheshimiwa here, because you know he tried to bring some to Wakili here. He tried to bring yeah, he could be a Mheshimiwa also in the classroom because you know he has very good theories on a lot of issues, but those are classroom theories. Really?
How is economic
because
a
he's a lecturer.
You
know, let me tell you, some of these things you have to go to the real world to be able to juxtapose what you are saying with what happens in the real world. Because you're trying to draw a comparative. Oh, unemployment, it is this rate, there's this maize. My friend, listen.
But those are practical issues.
Look at this. Listen to one thing. Listen to one fact, Wakili. Debarl, let me finish. Okay. You give them. They spoke twice each when I was quiet.
Okay, you'll finish the problem.
You see, their statistics, their statistics, and especially Wakili Mwalimu here, is very wrong, because it ignores the fact that population has grown. You know, he's comparing at how many people employed when Kibaki left.
Not at all. I haven't used that statistic.
Listen, in the elections of 2013, how many registered voters did we have? We had 14 million registered voters. How many registered voters do we have in 2017? 19 million. What does that signify? It tells you that our population has grown.
But the same has been projected.
No. 40 million registered voters in 2013. Right? Even by then, I don't think the population of Kenya was 40 million by then.
Let me make my case. Why are you making my case?
We disenfranchise them.
No, make your case. Allow me to make my case.
Yeah, make it, but make it fast.
Listen, gentlemen.
But you're writing on a very wrong assumption. We cannot really allow that.
Our population has
you purge my argument when you have your facts right. My friend, do you want to face this camera and tell Kenyans that the population of Kenya in 2013 is the same as the population of Kenya in 2019?
We are not saying that.
We are not, but it was not 40 million.
You see,
let him finish.
If you want us to bring the statistics that say this is the percentage by which it has grown, we can get the statistics. But the fact is that in 2013, the population of this country was not the same as in 2017, and hence, every other factor,
that
including...
That we agree, but you say... No, just say yourself. You said 40 million registered voters. We're talking about the registered voters.
No.
That is what you said. 40 million registered voters.
I didn't say 40. I said 14. I said 14 million. We had 12 million.
But we don't use voters to look at the difference in population.
You know, I said we had 14 million voters, and now we have 17 million voters.
19.
And the fact is we have around 19 million voters.
Yes.
That is an indication that there has been expansion in the population space, and that means that the population has grown. Now that factor is constant. When you go to unemployment, when you go to childbirth, when you go to the effect of how much money you deploy, every factor is constant.
Thank you.
And so you cannot make an argument about 2013 and try to pose it as though it should remain the way it is. You have to, and I was saying that to Mwalim because he teaches, that when he's applying his logic and his arguments of what he says in the classroom, he must look at the realities on ground.
Thank you.
You know, just a quick answer because he's...
Let's say from Farah.
Farah can say, then I can answer.
I can't, you see, I'm not surprised with Wamatangi. You know, every time Wamatangi comes in here, he comes with a new, what you call, fashion of Jubilee. Look at the shirt he wears. This is a man who puts on a red shirt, even on a show like this, when the election is ready to go. But having said that, you see, that loyalty. Hang on a minute.
He knows how to position himself.
Let me just say, I've had you. Now, but the point is,
how can you argue, that if when you come here, I don't argue that whether you come here as a Muslim or as a Christian, my friend.
Okay, let's not gravitate there.
Please,
okay, let him finish. Okay, let him finish.
It's like you want to take all the time. Listen, the fact of the matter is that we are talking about facts on the ground. And I assure you, you can deny the facts. You can go out there like that proverbial, you know, princess who said, why are people complaining? Because of, why don't they eat cakes if they can't get bread? And that's more or less the kind of a mind that things are fine, everything is good. This country is going to that state right now, let me tell you. Because if you go to the supermarkets, I don't know where Wamatangi, what they call shops, or only allows, you know, his driver or somebody else, or the family or the madam to go and do the shopping. You go to these places right now, there are no queues. People are not shopping. There's no buying. People are starving in the country, let me be honest with you. And when you give all those, when you talk about a 4-ton, what do you call, assembly plant here, 4-ton is one of the most popular vehicles we have right now. We have done away, we have 4-ton buses, lorries, and all those ones, because the Mercedes-Benz and the rest of it, you know, our focus initially on the German and British and the Leyland has more or less diminished, and the Chinese seem to have filled in there. If that kind of a factory is going to close, that tells you a lot about the economy. When you look at, I was just driving now, as coming from home.
Are you driving a photo or a Mercedes?
No.
Because you know,
I was driving a Japanese car.
And then you're telling us Honda is very popular, you're not driving one.
Okay.
But having said that, you see, Wamatangi wants to shout all the way until the program is over and interrupt everybody. But having said that, seriously, I'll tell you, look at both sides of the road right now and see the kind of office space to let. You get my point?
Yes.
Houses to let, you know, everything. Go down some warehouses to let. Everywhere you go right now, there is no business. That gives you an impression. And then look back at 2012, just before we went for the elections in early 2013, you could hardly get a place to rent.
Now there's so much space.
Now the space is there, and people are basically folding. People are downsizing. People are leaving the offices and operating from homes. You see what I mean? I mean, this is the reality of the matter right now. Talk to your friends in business.
A quick answer. All right. A quick answer to what he said.
Let us argue.
Wait.
Let us argue within the
and when I was talking about STR, I was talking about
Let's hear from Kiptoo, please.
A quick answer. You know, he's made a very good thing. And there's always the notion out there that we are always accused of as lecturers, that we only talk in classrooms. We forget that these theories, you can only talk of a theory upon its proof, upon its veracity out there.
I was only reminding.
Number two, I happen to practice law, which is a service sector economy. So I am in direct contact with the clients, like themselves.
Yes.
If manufacturers, if the same producers are doing so well, the biggest beneficiary are the service industry, law being one of them. I'll confirm to you, and every lawyer can tell you this, for the last 1 year,
it's not business.
The number of, in fact, to the extent that law firms have nothing to do, because there is no, even the corporate clients, look even at the banks, they struggle. Secondly, if you talk about
maybe facts, Kenyans have reformed.
Not at all.
There's no crime.
Not at all.
Yeah,
in fact, to be more specific, I can even challenge you. We choose to walk away. In fact, we do the show out there and just walk around shops and ask the Kenyans, is the cost of living better Ask them, is life better? Do we have opportunities? I think those ones are in fact, they are as practical that there is nothing theoretical about them. In fact, to be specific, Debarl, if you talk about unemployment,
we need to be winding up now.
Let me finish. Unemployment.
Just a moment. Let me finish. We'll give you time to wind up.
He said it very well. That the population in 2012 and in 2017 is different. That is not in doubt. He shouldn't forget that we do census every 10 years. And when we do a census and release the results, we do it with a 10-year projection. In fact, to be specific, if we are to go to the National Bureau of Statistics, they always have those pinpoint statistics that by 2017, this is the population. Now, we calculate the unemployment rate based on the current population.
Thank you.
So when we use the rate, we are using this population, not that we are using the population of 2012.
30 seconds now.
So it falls flat to say that we have more unemployment simply because there's a bigger population. Not at all.
Thank you, Joshua. We're 30 seconds, we need to wind up. 30 seconds also, Farah.
Well, I think, because this discussion has really been mixed up. You see, Wakili started talking about the cost of living. We were talking about Farah started talking about road transport. Yes. And really...
It is all within the NASA and Jubilee politics.
And it was really something very simple. But anyway, let me summarize by reminding our voters that yes, we are closing quickly the window to our voters going to confirm their details, that indeed they're registered voters, and we need to have a proper election. We need to have an election where everybody gets the opportunity to express themselves and get the right to choose whom they want to be led by. And because this is such an important election in our history and in our way forward, I want to urge our people to make sure that they confirm that they can be able to vote and vote for the right people and vote Jubilee and ensure that we can get the continuity that we have had of a good chance to get this country to the next level.
All right, Farah, I would love you to actually comment very briefly on what is happening within WIPA right now.
No, but it's not fair.
It's not fair?
No. You should have given us the opportunity. Let's discuss on WIPA. You said
because he's actually and we're really stuck for time. We don't have time. We'll actually pick up on it next time. I want to hear from him as in his capacity as deputy leader of WIPA. Just a moment. Is WIPA really coming undone?
WIPA is growing, and when a party is growing and it's becoming national, and the leader of WIPA is probably the best star we have right now in the future of the politics of this country. And what do you call a unified NASA candidate for the presidency in 2022. So we just like, even if you're going to amalgamate companies, even if you're going to, merge companies, there's always those people who are in the small companies, small outfits, who will feel insecure and threatened and the rest of it. So WIPA is growing too fast for the people who basically initially treated it as a very small community concern, which is confined only to the Kamba. So, and it's the same thing when Jubilee was folding all the small other companies. All those small companies had their own strains and challenges and the rest of it, because suddenly the thing was becoming bigger. Okay. So but I don't fault them. Let me be honest with you. I don't fault because this is a natural phenomena in anything that is growing. But I can assure you one thing. WIPA is the party to watch for the future.
Well, but next week we must have the opportunity to talk about WIPA. We had a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, but he came late. We couldn't have talked about WIPA. Thank you very much.
When I was talking about the STR, I was talking about the social impact. Before you undertake any project, you must do the social impact.
We are done.
Thank you. And make sure that the lives of those people are not.
The only area we were not agreeing.